tell you, I believe that one of the things God's doing is he's beginning to realign the generations in proper alignment. And I'm not just telling you this because I have a heart for youth and young adults. I'm telling you this because my heart burns for revival, and I want to see revival not only established but sustained. He is realigning the generations. It's interesting to note that Joshua was victorious in battle not because of what he did, but because of what Moses did. Moses turns to him and he says, Joshua, go down, get some men, take your swords, go down and fight the Amalekites. Joshua goes with the sword, but Moses says, I'm going to take the rod of God, which in Scripture speaks of authority. It was always a demonstration of who had authority. It was through the rod. He said, take your rod and go up to that mountain. And when Moses was in position, when he was in the right place, with his hands raised, with the rod of God, Joshua was victorious. But when Moses got out of position, Joshua, fighting with the same sword and the same skill and the same men, lost. Wesley in his commentary says the people's success or their safety wasn't as much dependent on Joshua's hands, but on Moses' hands. Because although Joshua's hands held the sword, Moses held the rod. See, I believe that the prophetic words about this generation coming up, that they're a Joshua generation. They're gonna take people in the promised land. They're an Elisha generation. They're gonna receive a double portion. They're an Esther generation. They're gonna stand before a king and see a nation delivered. But if they are that generation, then we have to study those lives and find out why were they successful. And I tell you, you study all three of them, and there is a common thread. There's a common theme that goes through their lives, and it is the issue of proper alignment. Moses, the older generation, is the one that was entrusted with authority, not the younger generation. I believe that all of us as believers have authority over sickness and different things like this. But I believe authority to take cities, disciple nations, see revival is not in the hands of the younger generation. I believe it is in the hands of the older generation. I don't know where the older generation starts. I think it starts for everybody over 32. March 12th, I turn 33, and I will change my theory on the older generation. But this is the reality. It is the older generation that has the rod. This is important to me because I want to see revival, and I'm trying to raise up and mobilize an army of revivalists. But it doesn't matter what I do to train them. It doesn't matter what I do to equip it. It doesn't matter what I do to call them. If they don't know how to properly align, and if the older generation is not in proper position, everything I do is wasted. This is why we built a whole movement. All of our conferences have a bunch of old people like Pastor Paul. We haven't built something on just bringing in young preachers. We have Bob Jones in, we have Cindy Jacobson, and we have Paul in, and we have Lou in, and we bring in fathers and mothers because I'm trying to get them to understand alignment and understand that we don't hold the authority. What happened is this: Joshua was victorious because he didn't have a spirit of independence on him. He didn't. There is a spirit of independence that is in the world that's crept into the church. It is in the church. I'm telling you, it's in the church. And what it's doing is it is disconnecting the rod and the sword. This generation gap, because of the spirit of independence, is disconnected. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't have preached this a few years ago because I was a young man, but I think there's a spirit of independence on the older generation and on the younger generation. The younger generation have disconnected themselves from authority. And this just happens. I mean, it's like, I can't wait till I turn 18. Man, I'm out of here. My parents don't understand, and they just want to keep me down, and I'm out of here. I want to go make my own decisions and live my own life. And they don't understand, man, what you're saying is going to kill you. The older generation gets frustrated with the younger generation, and they somewhat say, hey, listen, come back to me when you're older and a little mature and have it together. But we're not going to empower you yet. Listen to me, we've got to figure out how to align this thing. And I'm talking to young people saying, listen, you don't have a choice. I'm with youth pastors, and it's getting a lot better, but it was unbelievable, some of the stuff they'd say. I'd be in youth pastor meetings, and one of these guys said, man, we just need the old people to get out. We need the older generation to get out of the way so that us young people can have our revival. They're too set in their ways. And I'm thinking, you're missing it. We don't have an option. We don't have the rod. I'm not looking for moments of victory. I want sustained victory. And we don't have the rod. And then I tell everybody, I'm like, listen, and this whole thing of the older generation being too set in their ways, it's just not accurate. I'm like, you got to come to our church because some of the old people are the craziest people in our church. I'm not exaggerating. And we got some 80-year-old people that I'm like going over to the young people and going, guys, you're supposed to be the zealous, passionate ones. That 80-year-old lady should not be crazier than you in worship. Get over there and worship with some passion. I mean, they're like going on mission trips and laying hands on everything that moves, and they prophesy there at every meeting. They love all the new worship. I mean, they're just river junkies. So I tell them, I'm like, yeah, you got to come to our place because our old folk, they crazy. Our younger people are trying to keep up with them. But we don't have a choice. And there's a spirit of independence. I'm telling you, it is coming to the church. We have to aggressively go after this thing. Because that independence, if it's allowed to remain, it disconnects the sword and the rod. We have to once again realign the sword and the rod. The sword has to be properly aligned underneath the rod if we're going to be victorious, if we're going to be successful.